So for my final question, I wanted to dive a little deeper into how our upbringing affects our relationships and communication style. I'm aware that that is something that sounds so simple, like obviously the way you grow up affects X, Y, and Z. Well, yeah, that's true, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, see exactly what it affects and what resources are out there and what we can do, but also how we can be fragile and empathetic towards our peers, our partners, our friends, our bosses, things like that, where we develop daily contact or more than minimal contact with somebody that might sorry, I don't like this, that might, be a big part of our life in one way or another. So I did most of my form in audiobook and podcast because I work 2 jobs and do a bunch of other stuff and mom. But the 2 that I listened to the most, with the most benefit I felt, was one by Dr. Hyman, and then I listened to another podcast called, it's like the Relationship Talk or something like that. But the guest that Dr. Hyman had on his mainly focused so much on communication molded off of our lives as younger people. But yeah, they made a good point. Like, we are trained and taught reading, writing, arithmetic. We're not taught anything about communications or relationships, which is like one of our main things as human beings. Is we need that, we crave that. We're meant to be emotional people. Humans are emotional. Humans are meant to feel, and so focusing so much on these things that are a little bit more tangible versus what comes so naturally to our brain, what we need, what we crave as a species, kind of makes no sense to not have any focus on that whatsoever in our lives. So yeah, I found it really interesting. She touched a lot on, like, obviously how quality of relationships can really affect our quality of life. Stressors affect sleep. A lot of people who are in bad relationships end up, losing more sleep, having more illness, and it really is just a cycle of stress that we can manifest, but also that we develop through, just needing these things in our life. Tests are going to be hard, but relationships are going to affect you in a way that none of that stuff can prepare you for it. So they focused a lot on, like, giving yourself grace because you're still learning, touching base on, like, people pleasing and how that was a survival tactic for a lot of people growing up. So when it comes to setting boundaries as you get older, with people in your life, it becomes a little bit more difficult because it is a survival tactic, and learning when to say, like, hey, I can think 2 things at once. I can think that this might be scary, but not everybody's like how this person was in my life that made me feel that way. They also touch base on the fact it's not all trauma based. There's some simple dynamics that we don't realize aren't as healthy as we think they might be, like, don't tell them this because then this, like little things in your family where it might make sense, or it might hurt your grandma if you hear that, and so you might not want to say that, and you think you're doing something innocent and kind, and it is innocent, but it might not be kind, maybe not with ill intent, but those kind of things teach that people pleasing and secret keeping is appropriate. But if you're together with a friend or a spouse or a partner, then they start doing those things. It was normal for them growing up, but suddenly it's not normal as the person on the other side. It's hurtful. So being aware of that was a huge focus of this, and it was a huge point I took out of it too, because I could look at somebody and be like, well, she lied to me, like my partner lied to me, or my best friend lied to me, like I'm hurt right now, that's offensive. But seeing it in a different objective point of view, saying, okay, well, I can have empathy for what they grew up with, or sympathy, maybe not empathy, but sympathy for what they grew up with. That doesn't mean I have to be okay with it, but I can set a boundary there saying, I don't like that. And that brings me to the next point. A lot of the things that they touched on was being able to forgive, but not have toxic forgiveness. It's okay to remember these things that hurt you. It's okay to remember all the stuff. It's okay to not necessarily like let it go. It's okay to say, I forgive you, but I still want to know why. I think a lot of us grew up with that forgive and forget, it's, move on, don't dwell, like things like that. But that's not how our psyche works. That's not how the human works. That's just not what we do. So being able to understand that you can hold space for both, that was a really cool thing. I think she brought up the word toxic forgiveness, like, you have to forgive this person, you have to do this, somebody did something hurtful for you, like, yeah, it's a waste of life as well, and it's a waste of life to hate. I think one of the quotes they said is like, resentment is like taking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Like, that was pretty brutal. But yeah, you don't hold that resentment, don't harbor it, but it's also okay to say, I don't think that was hurtful, and it's okay to feel that. I may forgive this person, but their actions still hurt me, and I can still feel that. So even if they grew up in that dynamic and that's how they respond, it's okay to still be hurt. And that's where setting boundaries comes in, and doing them appropriately with consequence, maybe not like a mean consequence, but something where it's like, this feels hurtful, and I will not do this. Like, I'm going to step away, and then learning to work it out after, if that's the goal. So I have a little list here because this is terrifying. I'm not a people person. I'm not even like a person who likes to socialize. It also brings up the point on, using words that are like, we all have heard of I feel statements. Like, yeah, you should say those things, but also identifying feelings. Like, they brought up a point like saying like, okay, identify 20 things that you feel, throughout the week or on a daily basis, or that you can feel in certain ways. And she's like, most people just give me like 5. I'm like, okay, well, if you can only feel 5 things, that's all you can identify. So maybe there's more out there, maybe there's more to it, or maybe there's more that we need to understand. But also learning how to use feelings in conversations. Like, as an example, like, that was hurtful for me, like, that made me happy, like things like that, and just saying them daily to get more comfortable with all these different feelings, get more comfortable with yourself, with your own emotions, can really help set those boundaries. I can't read anything, like look at that. It also says that, like, learning peace without holding a grudge is okay to do both. And it also brought up a lot of cool things about like the parental generation. I don't know if any of you guys are parents on here, or if you've experienced this with your parents, but I know I used to be a teacher, so I had to do a huge wake-up call for that with myself, my kids, everybody else's kids, and my own upbringing, and just say like, okay, some of this stuff is kind of a hard pill to swallow, but maybe it wasn't right. Maybe the way I'm going about this wasn't right. Maybe my thoughts on this aren't right, and I have to adapt that. A very important thing that I learned the importance of, and this is just like a less emotional example, is risk play. Okay, so like my kids, my house has a rock climbing wall in it, like a crash mat. Like, they're gonna be stupid, do it smart, right? Well, kids memorize their movements, so when you walk up a playground equipment, if somebody's like, oh, be there to spot them if you feel comfortable doing that, or if you want to, but don't correct their movement, because they're not going to remember how to get down from that. So, a lot of parents, it brought up on a more emotional standpoint of kind of a similar thing is, shielding kids from uncomfortability instead of sitting with them and helping them work through it. Like, if you do something scary, if you feel something shameful, don't correct their steps, don't bail them out of it, don't do that. Like, allow them to embrace that discomfort, allow them to learn to feel and sit with that and get comfortable with the uncomfortable, and understand that this is a normal process of life. The more you shield that child, the more that the less understanding they're going to have, the less tools they're going to have. And that's a big part of really all of this, is we're all human, we all have things that we are not in control of, but understanding the tools to understand as people for ourselves and other people in relationships, so we're not sitting there, you're doing this wrong, I'm doing this wrong, criticizing ourselves or somebody else, or children, or somebody else's children, or our friends, or our partners. It's important to stay away from that, you know, and just not a lot of us have the tools to do that, or understanding the accountability, or understanding sometimes that our way isn't the only way, and there's a million other ways out there, and there's a million other people with a million different experiences, and there's times where things are going to be uncomfortable. There's times where you're going to have to set boundaries. There's times where it's okay to be angry, like, you know, and there's times to understand, like, maybe that anger that you get from this person crossing that line or whatever is not something that you should, you know, it's okay to be angry with it, but don't resent that person necessarily. Like, think of it as they gave you a gift of courage to stand up for yourself. They gave you the gift of, you know, like, almost self-identification, you know, by setting those boundaries, by learning how to understand where that was uncomfortable, and learning how to understand and trust yourself to, like, move forward or move on, or just say, I'm not, this person isn't meant to be in my life, and they won't be, and it's okay to be hurt by that. Or on the opposition, like, where to embrace them. You know, I think there's that Bob Marley quote that's like, everybody's gonna hurt you, you just have to find the ones worth hurting for, and that's true. Like, you know, we are emotional creatures. It's our entire markup. At least that's what my therapist told me. That's what humans need. It's what we crave. And when all of that's developed from our upbringing, and it's all we know, and we develop these mental and emotional habits with no reflection or recognition for ourselves and no sympathy for others, while also maintaining boundaries, it can really be detrimental towards the communication to the people around us. You know, we can shut them down, we can argue, we can like, I don't know, push them away. Like, we can do anything we want. We can yell at them, we can scream at them, but the end of the day is we're all built up of these little markers of ourselves, our temperament, our upbringing, our own daily habits and patterns, our own mentality, our own thought process. You know, some people are sentimental, some people are neurodivergent or not. Like, it's just, we all are made up of different things that make all of us beautiful, unique, you know, the whole nine. But learning how to be sympathetic towards people without losing your boundaries, I think, can really be a key part of relationships in any way. It doesn't have to be romantic or anything, but I think it really helps communication to be able to embrace all of that, including being uncomfortable, because setting boundaries sucks. And this is coming from a person, I'm like, my best friend's my ex-husband, should probably get out more, but you know, it didn't work because we never learned how to communicate. Now as friends we communicate better, but if we could turn the time back, we would, and be more accountable of ourselves and be more understanding and sympathetic of the things around us. I think we all have that friend or something that's happened in our past, or a conversation we might replay in our head where we're like, well, I could have, should have, would have done this better. Well, yeah, but that's all growth, and that's what we're supposed to learn from, and that's what we're supposed to be uncomfortable with. And instead of saying, well, they made me do this, I had to do this, this is how I reacted, because, well, yeah, partly, yeah, you know, we all have a trigger point, but accountability and communication, I think, can resolve so many things, and sympathetic towards other people, but again, maintaining that boundary so you don't lose yourself along the way, because it's okay to do all of it. Yeah, that's the best part that I gathered. I wanted to focus more on, like, okay, our upbringing does this, but how can we use things to move forward as tools and create tools for ourselves and maintain better, healthier relationships in the long run moving forward. Let's see, I feel like there's like something else written down on here. But yeah, also another thing that they brought up was like the power of just like, they use therapy as an example because, you know, like not a lot of people just get somebody to listen to them. Like the power of hearing somebody and having compassion for somebody and just giving them an ear to talk to, undivided attention for, you know, 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour. Like, that's something that also is really healing it's such a weight lifted off. But yeah, if anybody's ever sat in therapy or had a really long conversation with a friend where they're genuinely listening, like, it is such a release. And being able to do that to each other, for each other, with each other, because again, we're all human, is also a big part of communication. Sometimes, I think there was another, I don't remember who said it, but there was another module that we did in here that spoke about how communication can be in silence, and it can be good silence or it can be bad silence. Nobody likes to be ghosted. That's incredibly hurtful, offensive. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. It's so disrespectful. It's cowardice. Like, I just think it's really cruel to ghost people when you have the option to say, I don't want this, I don't like this, I'm not interested in this crossed my boundaries, like, or I need space. But being silent in the form of listening while giving compassion, giving your time, giving your ears, like, everybody deserves that. And I think there's a reason, even though it's super expensive, therapy is still beneficial, is because you finally get that. And if we can find that within ourselves and our friends to be able to do that for other people, and find people who will do that for us, I think, honestly, you know, everything would just be a little bit better. We would feel heard, we would feel comforted, we would be able to work these things out in our head by spitting them out loud. And sometimes you just need that little reset. And, you know, that's something that I feel like is pretty universal, no matter how we grew up. Like, sometimes we just need to listen, you know, and sometimes we just need to be heard. But yeah, those are the key points. I don't know if I strayed. I hope all that made sense, but those are the key points I felt were great tools to keep in the back of your head, no matter how you grew up. Sympathy, empathy, listening, compassion, boundaries, and boundaries. But also being able to hold two feelings and spaces for two things at once. It's okay to be angry and happy at the same time. It's okay to, like, I don't know, like, when my mom died, I felt really guilty for a long time, feeling happy and having fun, but also missing her. That's a little irrelevant, but, like, just having contradicted feelings without guilt. Understanding that, you know, sometimes you have to reshape the way things are for yourself and understand things and face a little bit of hurt, saying maybe that wasn't quite a healthy way to go about things, and sitting with that and being uncomfortable. Learning to be uncomfortable is a huge tool. Learning to not have to react and rev your engine when you feel that, like, hit in your chest, you know, when you're feeling angry at somebody, like, you know, it's okay to just sit with that for a little bit and, like, allow yourself to just learn how to be comfortable with it, you know, learn how to regulate, and then reflect, and when it's time to be accountable and when it's time to feel those two different things, like, I'm hurt but I miss them, I feel this but I'm sad, I'm frustrated but I want this, like, this person hurt me but I care for them. Like, just all these things that we've all gone through in different relationships, which I believe come from different trigger points of our upbringing, and maybe not trigger points, just patterns of our upbringing, can, I don't know, just really benefit future communication styles. And, you know, when you think somebody's doing something wrong, maybe just listen to them for a little bit, and just, like, again, it's okay to say and think in your head, like, this person isn't compatible for me, but they went through something different than me. Can I work with this or no? Maybe not, but can I listen and be human and allow them to be human too? And just allow yourself and them and everybody to have that essential freedom and that acceptance as a human being. And then use that to move forward or withdraw from a person, and understand you can have capacity to do two things at once and have sympathy for everything. So, well, that was terrible. I hope any of that made sense, but yeah, my written thing will be a little bit more together. I hope everybody has a good day.